Hi there. Thank you for joining us today. We are going to talk about gallbladder health, everything gallbladder health today. And I'm really excited to welcome my colleague, Kristin Frechette. She works as a functional nutritionist specializing in gut and gallbladder health. My name is Karen Kennedy, and I own Real Food Matters. And welcome, Kristin.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah. So when did we met working with Leslie Bytel,
Yes.
our business coach. So for those of you who don't know, people who go into healthcare work, on the whole, know nothing about running a business. And so the really smart ones of us decide to hire someone like Leslie Bytel to kind of teach us how to do all this businessy stuff. Otherwise, we think it's just, I don't know what we do. But so Kristin and I met there, and but I'm over on the West Coast near Vancouver, Washington, and Kristin is over in New Hampshire. So, but we were part of the same small group, so we got to know each other. And you know, I have so many clients who have gallbladder issues. Either they've had their gallbladder out or they're having issues right off the bat. And, you know, I was just looking some things up about gallbladder health, and I think gallbladder removal is the most common surgical procedure. Is that true?
It's like, if it's not number one, it's gotta be like number one or number two. Yeah.
So you should be paying attention to this. This is something that's going to affect you most likely. So Kristin works as a functional nutritionist, and I love her approach, and I follow her, and every time she puts something out, I'll always grab her freebie to she has some interesting freebies on like gallbladder health and how to eat after you get your gallbladder removed. So I'm hoping today to actually pick her brain, some things that I'd like to know and some things that my clients always ask. So shall we dive in?
Yeah, let's do it.
So first of all, how did you get into gut and gallbladder focus? Why focus on that?
Yeah, so I mean, I got into it after my own trials and tribulations of my own gut health issues, digestive issues, and I saw 4 different doctors, and I was getting to that point of, oh, you're gonna have to live like this, and I was almost gonna accept like that being my new normal. And thinking, looking back on it now, I'm so glad I didn't. And then finding that kind of more holistic way of healing, or just looking at the big picture, and working with somebody, and then also getting the education myself as well, and putting all those pieces together. And so now, as somebody that's kind of been there, like I have all the embarrassing digestive stories. Like, I won't share those, but like I was in the thick of it, and I've been able to see like the other side of it too. And I want to help people kind of get there as well. Those people that don't think that they have any other options, or that they're going to have to kind of live in this state of being uncomfortable, and not liking their body, and just hating, the joy of eating it's not fun anymore. And so working with those people to help them, see the other side, and that it does get better.
Yeah.
And so I specialized in gut starting off, and then realizing as I worked with people, I was like, oh my gosh, like the gallbladder is like that missing key that a lot of people don't really think about. When you think about the gut, it's always, the small intestine or the large intestine, but you've got this little guy, this little organ over there sitting under the liver that is just so important. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I gotta, focus on that too.
Yeah.
Thinking about, again, the big picture, that holistic view. So that's kind of how I got into the gallbladder as well. When with my digestive issues too, I did have issues, digesting fat and supporting the gallbladder as well.
Right. So before I go on, ask a bunch of other technical questions, could you give us an update on what the gallbladder actually does? What does it
Yes.
what does it do? What does the gallbladder do? What is bile? Like, how does that all work?
Yeah, so the gallbladder it's kind of just an innocent bystander. So it is this storage container that sits under your liver, and it just stores all the bile that your liver makes. So that's really its job, is to sit there and collect the bile. Um, and bile is produced by the liver. So bile breaks down and helps your body to digest fat, the fats that we eat.
Mhm.
So I like to give this kind of scenario is, think about if you just made bacon. You just cooked bacon and you have that the sheet pan, and you put it in the sink to wash it. If you used soap, if you just used water, you're just going to spread that grease around. It's not going to go anywhere. You're not going to clean it. It isn't until you use dish soap that the grease breaks up and then it slides away, and then you're able to wash your pan. So that is what bile is. It is that dish soap that breaks up those fat molecules, so then your body is able to digest it properly.
That's a great, I love the soap analogy for bile.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And it has a big role too, as far as the rest of the digestive system goes, for bile.
Okay. All right. And then doesn't the gallbladder's also bile's also involved in like detoxification too, isn't it?
Yeah, so you have it kind of toxins kind of cling on to it in a way as far as bile goes, and then helps it get carried out of the body. Another thing too is, the small intestine, and when you start to feel hungry or your stomach rumbles a little bit, or grumble, rumbles a little bit, and people are like, oh, I'm hungry, and so I have to eat. So that rumbling in your stomach is actually your migrating motor complex cleaning out your small intestine. So it's moving through your small intestine, and it's cleaning up leftover food, bacteria, just leftover debris, and helping to carry it out of the body. So that's a really important function within gut health, is the migrating motor complex cleaning out your small intestine. Because if that doesn't happen, then you can get leftover bacteria, leftover food sitting in your small intestine that can cause, that food to start to like ferment. That can cause bloating and gas, and then just bacteria sitting in your small intestine too, where it shouldn't be, like that, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. So that function of the migrating motor complex cleaning out is really important. And bile, some studies show that there's these 3 phases of cleaning for the migrating motor complex. There's 3 or 4, and bile has some involvement as far as towards the end of cleaning. So it's just this small, very minute detail of this big, cleaning process that's really helpful, and bile has, a role in it.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Bile is good. And what's so interesting, it plays such an important role, and yet so many of us live without a gallbladder.
Yes. Yes, I know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to put a pin in the living without a gallbladder, because I want to see if we can cover taking care of your gallbladder now. Hopefully, what to do when you find out you have gallstones. Basically how to keep your gallbladder, how to make it work better, and then what to do if you don't have a gallbladder at the end. I'd love to kind of go in that order today. So taking care of your gallbladder, what are some things, do you have ideas of maybe how people, do you like have your top ways that people damage their gallbladder, and then ways that people can take care of it?
Yeah, so there's definitely, as far as damaging the gallbladder, my kind of philosophy a lot of times is that we've come from this, low fat has been drilled into us. Like, I don't know about you, but like growing up, I had those like 100-calorie packets of like those like, cookies and things like that. And so we were so conscious of being low fat that a lot of people just tried to avoid it completely or almost completely. And so what happens there is when you eat very low fat or no fat for a long period of time, your gallbladder isn't able to release that bile.
Right.
And so what happens is that it stays in the gallbladder and it starts to get stagnant or sluggish, and it's not high quality.
Mhm.
So then you have this kind of stagnant bile that is then sort of being released from the gallbladder, and that's how, gallbladder issues can start. So definitely, going low fat for very long periods of time. I say that we were so focused on calorie counting that we kind of forgot about like quality of our food.
Right. Right.
So that's one thing. Another thing too is actually estrogen plays a role in
Mm.
your bile and your gallbladder. So if you have too much or excess estrogen, that can actually cause the bile to again get sluggish as well. And so women are more susceptible to gallbladder issues.
Okay.
Yeah.
So estrogen, is it the high estrogen or the estrogen dominance? Is there a distinction between those two in that case?
Yeah, so no distinction between the two, but when you have the excess estrogen, it's causing it plays a role in as far as the quality of the bile. And so
Okay.
when there is too much of it, that's when it can kind of get clumpy or sluggish.
Oh, all right.
The other thing too is that birth control actually is a big one too. I mean, it's written in the pamphlets of birth control, but it is linked to gallbladder disease.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, and so it's kind of, is it because of the estrogen or is it because of the actual medication? So, but it is in there.
Yeah. And Gina's asking, what about men with excess xenoestrogens?
So I've actually had somebody ask me that, and I don't think that there is much, there isn't a lot of studies on it, but if your body is processing it as estrogen, there could be a role in it,
Right.
especially if there are fat digestion issues.
Right. So interesting. So if people there's people who are like, I'm sure someone's listening going, well, I'm on oral birth control medication and that's actually a good solution for me. What would they do to take care of their gallbladder if they had, let's say they have high estrogen or they're on oral birth control, oral contraceptives? What are the kinds of things that they could do then to take care of it?
Yeah, definitely. So as far as your gallbladder, so it's funny because it's like you have to take a kind of like a step back and look at the liver, because your liver is the one that is producing this bile too. So it's kind of like this main culprit. So supporting the liver. So trying to, as much as you can, eliminate some toxins from your daily life as much as you can. Don't go crazy, control the controllables as far as that goes. But as far as your gallbladder, staying hydrated. Bile it's about like 95% water. And so staying hydrated so that it can, again, be easily released from the gallbladder when needed. The other thing too is bitter foods. So the foods that you eat, they are bitter. So like lemons, limes, parsley, cilantro, dandelion greens is another one, or dandelion root tea.
Yeah.
Those are some bitters that they kind of like kickstart your digestive system, but also they can trigger the bile to be released from the gallbladder again, so that it's getting circulated throughout the body.
Okay.
So that's another thing too that I suggest. So definitely staying hydrated and incorporating bitter foods, focusing on liver support as well. For liver support, dandelion, I love dandelion root tea, definitely an interesting taste. I don't mind it. Have you ever had it?
I have.
Yeah, yeah.
I have. I like bitter tastes. That's something I like.
Yeah, yeah. So that dandelion root tea can help with liver and then also the bile itself too.
Okay. So with your clients, when you're talking about just general meal planning, do you often recommend they start their meals with like a salad of bitter greens and bitter foods? Is that something that you recommend?
Yeah, or just even some room temperature water with some lemon in it. I feel like that's kind
Okay.
of the most easily approachable or
Yeah.
easiest way to kind of integrate that into um, a daily thing. So I do recommend like the some fresh lemon with water, especially
That's
in the
great.
morning too. Just kind of help kickstart your digestive
Mhm.
system.
Gina asks, what about milk thistle?
Mm. That's a good one too. If you do get like bitters in like they come in little tinctures too,
Mhm.
you can work to incorporate bitter foods into your meals, which is awesome. There are also like little tinctures which are liquid bitters. You can find like milk thistle in those as well.
Which takes me to the idea of the aperitif. So very Victorian idea of, and these are more popular, of having, as one my friend John from the north of England likes to say, never eat on an empty stomach, which
Mm.
for him means a pint of ale. But for me, it might mean some bitters, and what I'll sometimes find myself recommending to my clients who like a cocktail now and then is to have a mocktail that they make bitters out of, because I've noticed that craft bitters are
Mhm.
actually aromatic bitters are really popular.
Yes.
Is
Yeah.
that helpful too?
Yeah, I mean, if you wanna make a mocktail with, some bitters, I would say go for it. Yeah, I mean, it is I mean, if you're getting a high quality bitter,
Mhm.
that I say go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Make it fun, it doesn't have to be, um, "Oh, drink lemon water every morning." If that works for you, great, but also, yeah, you can make it fun, put some, you know, bubblies in it, like, soda water and some bitters, splash of, like, um, cherry juice or something like that, pomegranate
That's
juice,
ideal.
yeah.
Yeah, we have a little cocktail hour.
Yeah.
Um, so do you do you notice, like you were talking about, you were doing gut health was your specialty and realized you needed to bring gallbladder things in, and that oral contraceptives are something that's known to kind of bring on some gallbladder issues. Are there certain people who are more at risk in addition to like the high estrogen group? Because I've noticed, like, because I work with people with metabolic health, so people with
Mhm.
type 2 diabetes or pre-diabetes, I'm seeing that a lot. I think I read a long time ago that there might have been a link with gluten and gallbladder. What are some links like that that you know of?
Yeah, so the gluten and the gallbladder one too, because gluten can cause pretty much inflammation, throughout the entire body, is what they were saying. So then it could be affecting the gallbladder as well. Um, but you touched upon it, the a fatty liver, because if you have a fatty liver, you're not going to be producing the best bile. And again, when you have that stagnant bile in the gallbladder, that's when the gallbladder can get inflamed. That's when gallstones start.
Yeah,
Um, so
that makes sense.
yeah, yeah. So a big connection with that is the fatty liver. If you don't have a good functioning healthy liver, then the byproduct is going to be not the best bile.
Right. So for those of you listening who are like, how did she just jump to fatty liver all of a sudden? Because people who have pre-diabetes and type 2 diabetes frequently also have fatty liver, and this is non-alcoholic fatty liver. So, and because we're just assuming that that is present at the same time often, then fatty liver.
Mhm.
Kristen's talking about leading to the gallbladder issues. That makes so much sense.
Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
It's all connected.
Yeah. And then Catherine was asking me, she wrote earlier and she asked about fasting and gallbladder health. And her question was, that there's so much information about fasting right now and how it can help fix our bodies and autophagy, metabolic syndrome. Um, and wanted to know how to incorporate fasting into her lifestyle in terms of gallbladder health. Is there any
Yeah.
anything in the literature there?
I haven't seen too much. I mean, as far as like fasting goes, as long as you're giving that period, a period of time or that window where your digestive system is resting,
Mhm.
and then your gallbladder, like I said, starting that migrating motor complex too when you're fasting, and then that bile is involved a little bit. Um, but I just think like broad, big picture, yes, doing some fasting that your body can handle. I always like fasting is it's good and it's bad.
Mhm.
So I always say, like, women should only be doing it during certain times of the month of their cycle. There's times when a woman's body just needs to rest, and we don't want to add on. Then fasting becomes a stressor, and we don't want to do
Mhm.
that if it's already needing some extra resources. And um, so that's one thing. But on the other hand, um, fasting is great. It increases certain beneficial gut bugs, like Akkermansia is one that can increase when you're doing fasting, and it gives your digestive system a break, and that includes your gallbladder too. So it's kind of big picture, but yeah.
Okay. And she was asking about fasting every now and then doing like a 24 to 36-hour fast. And is that safe for your gallbladder?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it really depends on the health of your gallbladder. If you have gallbladder issues, then doing a fast might not be the best thing, because at that point, then the bile is just sitting in your gallbladder for longer because you're not eating, and so then it's not getting released. So it's like, all right, you have to kind of figure that out too. Like, where is my body at right now? Do I need to support it as far as getting the bile moving and thinning it out? Or
I
is it
see.
okay if I do a fast right now so that I can give it some rest and kind of like power up, you know?
Right. So it's really individual.
Yeah. Yes.
And on that note, I had been advised when especially using digestive bitters therapeutically, that if someone has gallstones, they shouldn't use bitters. Could you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so I feel like it's kind of the same thing too, where it's like I've seen where it's like, don't use bitters when you have gallstones, because then those gallstones are going to want to try and get released, and then that's going to cause an attack. And then there's other parts where it's like, no, like it's fine because we want to start to thin the bile, we want to get rid of those gallstones. So I've seen both sides of the story. I would say that it really just depends on the status of where you are. How big are those stones? If you get testing done, they'll say like large stones detected, or it might even give you like a size. So in that case, like I would say be very cautious when you use bitters.
Okay.
If somebody's got some really small stones and they've talked with their doctor, and there's no immediate threat as far as like having to get the gallbladder removed, then use it with caution, I would say. Again, it's like everybody's, personal tolerance too.
Right. And I think about all the people who could be using bitters who have gallstones but don't know it. They're just
Exactly.
there.
Yeah, right. You might not know. And so you've been maybe using bitters and have been okay.
Mhm. Yeah. So another question that I have that I meant to ask is, then this is backing up that I should have asked earlier, is how do people know if they have gallbladder issues?
Yeah. So as far as gallbladder issues, that's a great question. So the big ones, I would say, your gallbladder sits under your liver, so on the right side. And if you are eating a meal and you've got pain on the right side, that could indicate some gallbladder issues, usually while you're eating or maybe like shortly after. Is pain over there. Nausea when eating, because your body's not able to break down those fatty foods. Nausea is a big one. Dry skin, and then especially dry, cracked skin on the feet. Like,
is this because you're not absorbing the fats?
The fats, and then like you're not getting vitamin A, which is those fat soluble vitamins. You're not getting those, and so that can show up as skin issues.
Right. Oh, right. Because if you're not absorbing fat, then A, D, E, and K also not going in.
Right. Exactly. And so then that's like kind of this like domino effect. So the skin issues. Another one too is like yellow or light colored stools. Bile is involved with. So bile itself. I'm not sure if anybody's ever thrown up bile, not the funnest.
Butchered a chicken.
What was that?
Or butchered a chicken and seen a bile sac.
Yeah, exactly. So you've got this bright yellow color. So if you're not, if your bile's not being utilized the way it should be by the body, that can cause yellow stools. And also bile has to do with making our stools brown. So if, again, the bile's not being utilized by the body, then the stools will be yellow. And then another one too is floating stools. If you have a bowel movement and it's, floating on top of the water, that can indicate that you're not breaking down your fats, because if you've ever put like water and then like salad dressing and they're completely separate. Yeah, the oil, the fat is always on top. So that's the same thing with your stools. I've had somebody ask me, well, then mine will eventually sink. And I would say that if they're on top, but then kind of slowly start to go into the toilet, that's okay. That's okay too.
This is what we talk about, people. We talk about poop. I said, this is what we talk about, people. We talk about poop.
Yes, I know. I always forget that this isn't people's everyday normal conversation. So it's like, oh yeah, I gotta choose my words and wisely, so I don't.
Do people sometimes apologize for talking about their poop with you? Oh, sorry, I don't mean too much information, and you're like,
yeah, no, tell me, what was the consistency? Yeah, everyone's like, oh my gosh, sorry, TMI, but I'm like, oh, you have no idea.
No idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Karen has a couple of questions about nutrient absorption. She asks if you can absorb fat on an acid blocker.
So, yes, I would say for the most part. Stomach acid is a big role in proteins. Does play a role in fat digestion. You still can for the most part, but it's not going to be as good as it should. The main concern, so what happens is that bile plays a big role in fat digestion, and then there's some enzymes later down the road that are released by the pancreas that then also help to break down that fat. So it's the bile and some enzymes. Stomach acid, yes, does play a role in that. So you should be able to, but it's probably not going to be the best.
Right. Yeah, because it's that release of acid that actually initiates the release of the pancreatic enzymes in the bile to a certain extent.
Yeah, kick starts it in a way, and I'm sure your body can kind of compensate a little bit for that, but it's not going to be the best it could be if you weren't on that,
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then, Karen's got a lot of questions. Let's go here.
Okay.
Can a PPI acid blocker cause gallstones?
So I think over time, I would say yes. I mean, so a PPI is basically like the start of your digestive system. It kind of, like you said, just kickstarts everything. And so over time, if you're not getting all of those digestive juices and digestive juices, meaning like the enzymes and the stomach acid and the bile, if those aren't being released
Mhm.
because you're not getting that stomach acid in the beginning, over time, yes,
Right.
it's going to affect your gallbladder.
Right. Yeah, and so backing up, I was just Googling some names, so we had those. A PPI, for those of you listening, this is a proton pump inhibitor that they're H2 blockers that reduce the stomach acid. So these are things like Prilosec, Prevacid, those kinds of, those are the PPIs, acid blockers that people take for acid reflux.
Yeah.
And then she also asked about minerals. How about mineral absorption?
I would say, I mean, the biggest one is those fat soluble vitamins. Those are the ones that you're going to want to pay attention to as far as not getting the right levels of those, and not getting the total amount of vitamins A, D, E, and K. Again, that's going to have a domino effect too, with probably some vitamins and minerals too, but I would focus, as far as gallbladder health goes, definitely paying attention to those fat soluble vitamins, because those probably need some support.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That is that. So I can get to go back to my questions now. Let me see if anything here. Oh, what about those gallbladder flushes you always hear about?
Yeah.
Oh, did we get eye rolling there?
So I think that we just, we live in society today where we do want kind of a quick fix, and like, you hear about a flush and a detox and things like that. I think that they have their role, but you should definitely be working with somebody if you're going to do one. And again, you have to assess your situation. If you've got these large stones, you don't want to do it. You're going to put your body under much more stress, and it's not going to help you. It's going to hurt you in a way. So definitely assess your situation. But people have to realize that you got to back up a step too. Think about, okay, how did I get to this place? How did I get these stones? Make those changes first, so that if you do decide to do a gallbladder, a flush, that they don't come back, in a year and 2 years and things like that. So it's important to remember, how'd you get to this place first? Let's address that, so that if you do a flush, you're not in the same position in, a year, 2 years, 3 years, that kind of thing.
So you're working on root cause instead of a quick fix. You're working on root cause.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So again, they have their place, but I think that we always just immediately, we want that to be the first step, when it could technically be, the fourth or fifth step.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
So do you have anything else you're just dying to tell us about how to take care of your gallbladder before I start hammering away at surgery?
I don't think so. I mean, with everything too, just, following an anti-inflammatory diet, some fish and, ginger and herbs and, nuts like almonds and walnuts and things like that, because that's just going to help your whole body and also your gallbladder too, so that it's not inflamed. So that's just, big picture kind of suggestion as well, as far as, gallbladder health.
Well, so, when you said this earlier about how you started working on the gallbladder because you were focusing on gut health, and the gallbladder was such an important part. But the reverse seems to be true, that if you're focusing on gallbladder, but you're not paying attention to the inflammation that's in the gut, you're saying that is also a thing you need to take care of in order for your gallbladder to be healthy.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you're eating a diet that is inflammatory and it's not supporting your whole body, your gut, whole body health, and in exchange, the gallbladder too. So definitely supporting all of those things with an anti-inflammatory, diet. Yeah.
Great. So let's say someone's had their gallbladder surgery. And it seems to me that there's two stages to this. You have gallbladder surgery, and there's that time immediately after surgery where you need to take a certain amount of care, and you're usually given instructions on how to eat and what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's the long term, how to live healthy afterwards. And am I right that there's two different stages?
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So what's the first stage? So now you've had your surgery, you have no gallbladder for the first time in your life. How do you advise people right after that surgery?
So your body is learning now how to operate without an organ. Like an organ was taken out. Or I'll back up a little bit. So when you get your gallbladder removed, what's happening now is that your liver is still making that bile, but now there's nothing to catch it. So now what it's doing is that bile is dripping throughout the day into your small intestine.
Just a steady drip whenever.
Yes. Whenever your liver is going to make bile, it's going to be, just dripped out into your small intestine. So a lot of times that can cause issues because people will have excess bile, and that can cause bile reflux, like acid reflux when, you get that burning sensation, and sometimes it comes up into your mouth. People, I've worked with people where they've actually have thrown up in the mornings, thrown up bile, and that could be that excess bile. So that's one thing. And then another thing too is like loose stools with that excess bile. It's called bile acid malabsorption, where you have too much bile in your digestive tract. And so that can cause bathroom urgency, where you need to go to the bathroom and you need to go now, and then just loose stools.
Okay.
So those are some of the things that can happen post gallbladder removal. So we want to try and train our body as much as we can to produce bile when we're eating, because it's hard because we don't have that gallbladder to hold it anymore. So we're going to try. So there's lifestyle, and then there's dietary. So dietary changes right after the gallbladder is removed is I'm going to say like low fat. You want to go low fat. You don't want to stress out your digestive system by just, hey, let me just eat all this fat and like stress out, your liver's going crazy and things like that. Low fat for now. Long term, we want to find your personal threshold for how much fat you can eat. Fat is good. Fat has so many benefits for our body. Every single cell in our body needs fat. And so along with so many other things too. So we don't want to be scared of fat. We just want to find out what you can handle personally, personal threshold. As far as lifestyle changes, our bodies love schedules. We have our own little, internal clock called our circadian rhythm, which our body operates on. That's why we fall asleep at night and wake up in the morning. So trying to eat meals around the same time every day, just trying to making it easier for the body to say, hey, I'm going to eat now. So, hey, let's release that bile, because it's the liver now. It's not the gallbladder. Chewing your food. I know it sounds so, it sounds so basic, but helping your digestive system break down that food. And it's going to aid in digestion and that fat digestion too. Because again, your body, after gallbladder surgery, your body's like, oh my gosh, like what just happened? And so you want to help it out and support it as best you can. So yeah, immediate is, let's take it easy. Focus on carbohydrates for now.
Short-term, low fat.
Yeah, yeah, and choosing ones that, you know, you could do, a little bit of oats and things like that, but your root vegetables and some quality rice, organic rice too, and fitting that in. And then long term, you're gonna slowly want to increase your fat consumption and make it, the high quality fats, the olive oil and focusing on that.
Mm-hmm.
And so then finding out what your threshold is slowly. Do not go all in, and then you're just gonna kind of, it's like a bomb going off in your gut, and you're gonna want to get rid of that fat as much as you can. So going slowly.
So I have a question for me. I'm finding myself wondering, are different types of fats easier to digest when you're easing into things? For example, short chain, medium chain fatty acids versus long chain, coconut oil versus olive oil, saturated fat. Is there a difference there for digestion?
So that's a great question. So coconut.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm a nutritionist.
Coconut products. Coconut is found to be easier digestible fat because it is a medium chain triglyceride, MCT. It's a little bit shorter as far as breaking down that fat, and it has some benefits too. So definitely.
Would butter then fall in that category of being pretty short as well, or not?
So I've heard just and what I've seen is coconut oil. Haven't heard much as far as butter goes. And the great thing with like coconut oil too is that it's non-dairy, and so it's great to just use it when you're sautéing vegetables too. The taste isn't that strong when you're sautéing vegetables and stuff. So I do usually recommend that if people have gallbladder issues and post gallbladder removal.
Okay. That is good to know. Gina asking, again, with the good questions, Gina's a dietitian.
Yeah.
Why then do so many doctors tell patients post gallbladder removal that they don't have to make dietary changes?
That's the $1 million question. I wish I had an answer, but I just think that when we remove the gallbladder, we are like, great, everything is, you should be fine now. Like everything is hunky dory. Like people not necessarily should be going back to the lifestyle that they had before,
what caused it?
Right, exactly. I always ask the question, how did we get here? So just looking at that, so I unfortunately don't have an answer, but a lot of people, like they'll get their gallbladder removed, they'll be fine after, and that's awesome. Like as long as you feel good and you're fueling your body, like that's great. But a lot of times people do suffer from those digestive issues after they get their gallbladder taken out. Another thing too that just popped into my head is that we think that gallstones, we don't get gallstones anymore because our gallbladder has been taken out, but you can still get gallstones after your gallbladder has been removed because those stones are now starting to form higher up in the liver. So you could still get that same pain on the upper right side. And it's, this phantom gallbladder pain is because now those stones are still forming, but they're just in the liver.
I have heard this before from patients. They'll tell me, I'm like, could it be a gallbladder? They go, I don't have a gallbladder anymore. So it's going back again, root cause. How did we get here?
Right, exactly. And it's not something that's discussed, but definitely should be highlighted as far as taking care of yourself after gallbladder removal.
Yeah. So I'm gonna take a stab at answering Gina's question. Gina knows the answer to her question, but she wants us to say it. I'm gonna just assume they should be referring to a nutritionist or dietitian because that is their job to advise. That they should be saying, you do need some care. Why don't you go see a nutrition professional?
Exactly. Yes, because your body is not going to be the same. it needs to learn. You're going to have to adjust a little bit. And so, yeah, I mean,
and it's individual. You're going to need a partner.
right.
And Gina also asked, do the gallstones that form after you get your gallbladder removed, are they forming in the common bile duct?
Yes. Yep. So just higher up. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's where, the bile is coming out of. And if that's blocked, then you still have those issues that you did before getting surgery.
Right.
Yeah.
So like when I see people, because I'm not specialized and people aren't coming to me for gallbladder issues. I see people who have gallbladder issues or they've had their gallbladder out and now I'm seeing issues like a lot of bloating, IBS, and SIBO.
Yeah. Yeah.
So can you touch on why having your gallbladder removed might lead to having those issues then?
Yeah. So bile also has this amazing antimicrobial effect. And so when it's going through your digestive system, it is kind of keeping all of those microbes in check.
The soap.
What was that?
It's the soap. It's cleaning.
It's soap, exactly. Yeah. It's keeping everybody in check and clean as it's going through the system. So when you've got, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or just any sort of bacterial imbalance or also known as dysbiosis going on in the gut, that can cause bloating and things like that. And so even before your gallbladder is taken out, that could be going on because, again, if you don't have that quality bile, it's not going to be able to do its job to be antimicrobial and antibacterial. So then that's when those growths are going to occur. And then again, post-gallbladder removal, it's the liver. If your liver is not creating that bile, it's not going to be doing its job as far as like the bloating and kind of those digestive issues.
Right. Yeah. And yeah, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Makes so much sense.
Another thing I do want to point out as far as bile goes, and this is pre-gallbladder removal and post-gallbladder removal, if things are indicating that you have some gallbladder issues, focusing on soluble fiber, because what happens is that our body, our liver is producing bile, and bile is actually a very labor-intensive process for our liver to make. So our body is smart, and it will recycle about 95% of bile, so that it could be used again. That 5%, that's old. It's old bile. It's been used. Maybe it's got some toxins attached to it. We want it carried out. We want it carried out of the body. We don't want it to be recirculated because then you get that stagnant, sluggish bile that's being recirculated in the body. So that old bile binds to fiber. Fiber can help, get that taken out of the body. So you've got some nice, fresh, high quality bile too. So that
fresh bile, a nice fresh bile.
Nice fresh bile, yeah. So and insoluble and soluble fiber. For the most part, it's soluble fiber that does that. Okay. And
food sources.
Yeah. So as far as soluble fiber, so apples is a great one. You've got flax. Flax, the one I love is psyllium husk. There's been studies that have shown that psyllium husk, it's almost like a superfood. I hate that term, but studies have shown that it can help people with constipation and loose stools.
Okay.
So I really like it. It is what is in Metamucil, except doesn't have all those like additives and things like that. So you can buy that at a health food store.
I've seen it in bulk in like a Kroger's, a Fred Meyer's.
Yeah.
How do you use it?
So it's tricky because so some people will just mix it into water and like drink it. That's not my style. It's just the texture is definitely not my cup of tea. So I'll make like a yogurt bowl,
Hmm.
and I will do like maybe 2 scoops of the psyllium husk, mix it in, but I will also add a splash of water. So what
Oh,
happens?
because it absorbs so much liquid.
Yeah, because that's what it's doing as it, psyllium husk, as it's traveling through your digestive system, it is grabbing on, it's forming this little like mucus, gel-like consistency,
Hmm.
and grabbing everything as it's going through your digestive system. So if you leave it out like with yogurt for like, I don't know, it's like 10 minutes, it could be really like hard, like almost like a brick in a way. So
Oh,
adding it
okay.
some water. It sounds kind of gross, but it's good for you, and
That's a
it
good tip.
tastes great. You can mix in, bunch of other stuff too. So one thing as far as fiber, I know it's like, a bit of a debate, but as far as digestive issues go, if you have gallbladder issues, you most likely have some issues as, farther down the road, um, as far as, inflammation goes in your digestive tract. Go slow with the fiber. If you're,
Oh, yeah.
if you're going to add in psyllium husk, for example, go slow with that. You don't want to, you know, go fast, too quick. You know, I recommend going slow with that.
Thank you so much for remembering to say that. That is great advice because people could think, oh, this is terrible for me, when in fact, very small amounts building up
Yeah.
is the way to go.
Yeah. Or, I can't tolerate fiber. It's like, well, what did you do? 4 tablespoons for your first time? You gotta
Mhm.
you got to assess that. So fiber is definitely beneficial. You just got to, again, find your personal threshold.
Yeah. And I really like how, when I asked you about how to eat and what to do after you have surgery, you've just given such really simple lifestyle strategies instead of making it complex. I know they're boring, like, because the very unsexy work of chewing your food, consistent meal timing, it does have a lot of literature. There's a lot of peer-reviewed literature around that. But the one thing I get asked a lot is, will taking bile salts or ox bile
Mm.
help this situation? Do you use those?
So I do. I find them to be helpful when I'm working with people in these situations, because ox bile is um, kind of the closest thing to human bile, as far as when you're looking at like the composition of it. So that's why we use ox bile, and it's basically helping to support and bring in bile that might not be present when you're eating. Because again,
Mhm.
if you've got those issues, the bile might be stagnant and sluggish in the gallbladder, and it's like, hey, I'm eating, and it's like, I can't get out, like, let me out, kind of thing. So if you do have ox bile, it can help with that fat digestion again.
Right.
um, Over time, hopefully by making those like lifestyle recommendations, that you're able to slowly come off of that ox bile, and then maybe use something like a bitter, because the bitters are helping your body to produce your own bile. So
Right.
then it's like, okay, like let's maybe ease off the ox bile, and let's try bitters now. Let's try for my body to produce its own bile when it needs to. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I do think that they definitely, play a role.
Okay. Okay. That's great. I learned a lot. It's
Good.
very
Yeah.
good. I think what I learned, one of the things that I learned the most here was that I'm glad to hear that those simple, unsexy strategies do work and that
Yes.
you use them too.
Yes. And I think that in today's world, it's like, you're hearing about the latest diet and trend and things like that. But it's like, chewing your food has never and will never be a trend. You gotta do it. It's like,
Right.
unless you're on some liquid, diet, like, let's go back to the basics, because I think that we are looking at, 100 yards out, but it's like, let's look at what we can do today. Your
Yeah.
next meal, you can implement um, chewing 20 to 30 times each bite, and seeing how you feel. I actually had a woman who found me on Instagram, and she was like, this was before I was working with her. It was our first call, and she didn't have a gallbladder. She had it removed for maybe like, I think it was like 10 or 15 years, but she was like, I watched your video and I started chewing my food. And she's like, I noticed a difference. And I was like, yeah, exactly. When? Yay.
Yes.
And she said, bloating's not gone, but I've definitely noticed it go down. And she said that urgent bathroom runs were a symptom of hers too. And she was like, I noticed that I'm not like, it's not as an intense urgency. And I was
Okay.
like, that's pretty good. Like, just chewing your food, it can make a difference if you're willing to sit down, like, be
Yeah.
present and work on that. It's gonna feel really weird at first, but I promise you it's free. It's free,
It's
anybody
free.
can do
It's
it.
free. And speaking of Instagram, I have to tell you guys, I love Kristen's Instagram account. She in our, like I said, we met in our business program, and even some other people in our business program. We all follow Kristen and get ideas from her Instagram account because I love her account. She presents some really great actionable tips on her Instagram account. So definitely, I put it on here. Give her a follow. But she's also really funny on Instagram. I think you're really funny. But one tip, I want to see your dog on Instagram.
I
Because
know.
the other thing Kristen and I have in common is we both have cattle dogs.
Yes, which is definitely not the most common in New Hampshire. I'm not sure about you.
Oh, yes. I live in Southwest Washington, which is right, of course, by Oregon. And so most of our vacations are like on the Oregon coast. And we jokingly call the cattle dog is the Oregon State dog. They're very popular here.
Oh, okay. So, like, whenever Joe and I, my husband, we will go, like, there's like an outdoor mall. So,
Mhm.
like, we'll bring him with us so he can walk around and stuff. Literally, we get stopped maybe like every 5 to 10 minutes. Oh my gosh, like,
What kind of dog is that?
what dog is that? Like, it's yeah, definitely not very common up here. So I do definitely need to show his face more.
Oh, yeah, you'll get lots of Oregon people loving you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I'd love it if so the best way to contact you, the best way to follow you, is it Instagram?
Yeah, so you could do Instagram. Actually, on Instagram, I think I have a link right now.
Mhm.
Is the link to the freebie as well?
The
Um,
gallbladder freebie?
yes, yeah. So Instagram, and then my email as well is just info at and then KristinFrechette.com. I'm just checking if that's the freebie I have right now. Um, yeah, post gallbladder removal meal checklist, kind of a mouthful, but can also be helpful for people that are experiencing gallstones.
Yeah.
Can kind of try and implement a little bit of those recommendations that they'll help as well, in addition to definitely post gallbladder removal.
Yeah. Yeah. So go catch her. I've got her email up here. I had her Instagram, and then here's her website again. I know your website also, you can get that free download about gallbladder
Yeah.
health. So give her a follow on Instagram, follow her along like I do, because she's got a great channel. It will entertain you. It's not boring. It's not boring.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's make
yeah.
gallbladders fun and sexy.
Yes. Let's make gallbladders fun again.
Yes, yeah.
And we'll start a real trend. Maybe we should hashtag chew your food or something. Maybe there is a hashtag chew your food. I'm sure it's been done like 5 times.
Yeah, we should get a trend again, though.
There you go. Yeah. So thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me. If anybody has any questions, then if they think about it later on, definitely let me know. But otherwise, this has been fun for me. I don't know about you guys, but
Yeah.
it's been fun for me.
Yeah, me too. All right. Well, have a good one, Kristen. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, you too. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.